In November 1532, at the Peruvian highland of Cajamarca, there was an Inca civilization with a strong leader by the name of Atahualpa, who commanded a large army. Then one day, a couple of Spaniards led by Francisco Pizarro were looking for gold, but ran into the Inca civilization instead. Throughout the whole interaction between these two worlds, it was no surprise that the Spaniards did fear the Incas, but tried to play it cool. The Spaniards did not show to be any threat at first, but as soon as Atahualpa had chucked away a Bible that was given to him by the Spaniards, then they attacked. Now you would think, since there is a 500-to-1 soldier deficit in the Incas' favor and had the home court advantage, that they would demolish the Spaniards. Yet that was not the case. Not only were they unable to defeat them, they also weren't capable of taking a single soldier from the Spaniards. In contrast, the Incas happened to lose more than 7,000 of their own soldiers. The guns and horses just appeared to be overwhelming for the Inca army, resulting in the capture of the Incan leader and eventual execution. Now, why was that the case? Why are some civilizations develop much faster than other civilizations? Is it the environment's fault for why societies grew so differently? Or is humanity's wars and germs the reason for all this mess? This is what Jared Diamond plans to answer in the 480-page book, Guns, Germs, and Steel. The inspiration for the book started when he was on a trip to New Guinea and was confronted by a question from a man named Yali asking, "Why is it that you white people developed so much cargo and brought it to New Guinea, but we black people had little cargo of our own?" Which made Diamond think more broadly, not only concerning New Guinea, but why wealth and power distributed so unevenly across the world. All human beings began in an equal playing field, starting in Africa, but they started to spread outwards year by year by year by year, unfolding the earth. And by 10,000 BC, taking a step back and looking at the map, Diamond argues that this is the last time society would develop at the same pace. We can see mankind taking a turn over in Eurasia, where by the Euphrates and Tigris River there seems to be some semblance of crops already growing there, and people deciding to settle down and care for those crops. This place would be known as the Fertile Crescent, and the first area where any sign of agriculture is seen in the world, beating other regions by 1,000 years. But why didn't any other parts of the world make the shift from hunter-gathering to agriculture? Well, it's not that other civilizations didn't try to make the agricultural change, it's just that their environment wouldn't allow them to make the change. Unlike the rich wet soil that the Fertile Crescent may experience, parts in the Americas experience long droughts. Even if the civilizations could provide crops persistently, later on it won't be able to meet the demand of a rapid growing population, while the Fertile Crescent is a non-stop mass production. Also, some societies did not make the change because their egos wouldn't let them make the change to get more food. So these societies had to stick to being hunter-gatherers, while other areas that were in the Eurasian region began to become more agricultural civilizations. The advantage of having an abundance of crops doesn't just stop at mass food production, but it allows terrestrial herbivores to be attracted into these societies and become domesticated. Due to that fact, it came as no surprise to see these Eurasian civilizations manage to domesticate loads of animals. But what if these other regions did catch up to Eurasia in terms of food production? Then would those societies be able to develop as quickly as the societies that lay near the Fertile Crescent? Yeah, no. There are a lot of factors that go into domesticating strictly land animals, considering aquatic animals are hard to maintain and breed for the fact humans aren't made for water. Some may be wondering how come Africa's wide variety of animals, ranging from zebras to hippos to whatever, cannot be domesticated. And as Diamond points out that although sub-Saharan Africa has 51 potential candidates, none of them are a species that can be domesticated. Diamond then claims that a species needs to fulfill 6 factors to be an organism that civilizations can domesticate. The first being a cheap diet. If you can't afford to keep the animal alive, then you can't have it. So that means lions are out of the question, since you would have to produce enough meat to sustain a good diet. Next, you have to make sure that the growth rate is fast enough so it won't take up space for other livestock needing to reach full adulthood, which eliminates elephants and gorillas for the fact it takes them 15 years to reach full adult size. Following that, you also have to make sure that animals are comfortable enough breeding in front of not just humans but other animals of the same species, such as with vicuñas in South America who couldn't breed without performing a ritual. But that was not possible due to the cramped space and captivity. After that, you also have to make sure the captive animals are not dangerous, which makes the African buffalo impossible to keep because of how aggressive they are. Someone also has to make sure that the animals are comfortable around humans and don't run away. For example, gazelles, when held in captivity, are likely to die of shock, which makes them to this day undomesticated. Lastly, an animal must also have some semblance of a social structure. Sheep, horses, goats, and other animals understand that a shepherd is the leader of the pack and they must follow them, unlike a cow, which is a territorial animal. All of these factors are the reason for why relationships between animals in Africa or the Americas ended unhappy marriages. But over in Eurasia, the relationship between livestock and humans was a little too close, and from that relationship alone, civilization grew nasty germs. And these germs played a key role in bulldozing native people in parts of the world like South Africa, Latin America, and even Aboriginal Australia. The mortality rate for people first exposed by these germs can range from 50 to 100%. An example of this high mortality was when the Native American population experienced a net 8 million loss in Hispaniola once Columbus arrived in the Americas. But the threat of germs doesn't just stop at how quickly they spread, but also how fast they constantly are evolving, so they can spread even quicker. How germs are able to evolve comfortably is in densely populated areas, and since the Fertile Crescent has people everywhere, and predictably so, considering agriculture requires people to sit still, unlike hunter-gathering. And for that reason, these societies outside of Eurasia couldn't develop big germs, because they didn't have the population big enough to cultivate stronger germs, nor did they have the animals that could give them deadly germs to spread. Now, Diamond argues that germs are the biggest reason for why Eurasian civilizations dominated the two worlds. All those military histories glorifying great generals, oversimplifying the ego-deflating truth, the winners of the past wars were not always the armies with the best generals and weapons, but were often merely those bearing the nastiest germs to transmit their enemies. Not only did domesticated animals bring germs, but they also allowed people to develop forms of writing. With the growth of livestock and crops, you have to keep track of the resources when it comes to trades and commerce. So these societies decided to develop writing that was considered to be the distinction between barbarians or savages with civilized people. The earliest accounts of writing are near the Fertile Crescent, Mexico, and probably China. Once the writing was invented by these societies, the goal was then trying to spread it by conquest and religion with societies that have similar economies and political organizations. Societies that were isolated were then at a disadvantage because they couldn't receive influence from other styles of writing. Such as influencing writings from Mexico to the Andes was a slow process because of the geological and ecological differences between the northern and southern axes, delaying the diffusion of writing for the fact that sea voyage and heavy forests of the Andes was just too dissimilar from the dry deserts in northern Mexico. The isolation also hurted these smaller civilizations considering they could not increase their population size by uniting with other societies. The populations of North America, Sub-Saharan Africa, North Africa, and Australia still wasn't even half the population of Eurasia. So these civilizations are forced to make societies that can work with populations in the thousands, such as bands, tribes, and chiefdoms. First, these populated groups start off as bands, usually built up of a dozen people who are related to each other. Then the community evolves into a tribe where there is a set leader and the members are mostly kin-based. Finally, they progress into chiefdoms with social classes and residents with a much more shaped political government. The reason why these small societies can't grow out of chiefdoms and into states is that kleptocracy doesn't fly well with commoners, which is why societies in Eurasia are able to keep power within the elites by applying fear, since it's easier to disarm commoners in a gunpowder civilization than in one where the strongest weapon is a bow and arrow. So what's the point of understanding how the world around us came to be, when it doesn't help us in our daily lives? Well, not only does this book help you not become a useful idiot for those who have come to the conclusion of a race realist argument, preaching their theories of human evolution, but the common motif of the environment throughout the book allows us to see parallels in today's world, and not just in our surrounding environment, but our situational environment as well. You see, in today's world, where the grind just shifted from food to money, making places that still have not bloomed with innovation unable to because they need to survive. Noticing the history and acknowledging the problem within society, detailing the chain of causation from the histories of civilizations, ranging from agricultural to our modern economic growth, allows us to help these third world countries advance up the chain faster. In short, the themes of guns, germs, and steel seemed to be not only a driving force in the ancient world, but also a ripe area for study in the modern world.